So I'm basically going to go through the most common arguments that are given in defence of hunting in the UK. So a lot of the talks today are focused on trophy hunting and hunting that takes place abroad. But I'm specifically going to be looking at hunting in the UK. Now, I'm not from the UK, I'm from Canada originally. So hunting means something really different in England than it does where I'm from. And I think it's quite an English speciality that then has been exported to some former colonies. But in the UK, hunting means using dogs under human control. And the hunters themselves can be either on horseback, as in the top photograph, so that's a typical fox hunt, but they can also be on foot, and many people don't realise that. So the bottom picture is a beagle pack. They go out hunting hares, brown hares, and they do that on foot. And the aim of hunting in the UK is to use these dogs, they're scent hounds, so they locate through the smell of the mammal prey, these mammals that the hunter set out to kill and chase. They chase the mammal and they kill the mammal, with the exception of stag hunts or deer hunts. The mammal is then meant to be shot by the hunt itself, but certainly with foxes and hares, the dogs actually kill the animal. So in the UK, there are at the moment about 180 registered fox hunts, 90 hunts that hunt brown hares. And this is something most people are unaware of. When they think of hares, they think of hare coursing, where sight hounds, so greyhounds and lurchers, are set upon a hare. But there are 90 packs that hunt hares with packs of hounds, so beagles, bassets, and even foxhounds. Some packs are called harriers, and they go out and hunt foxes or hares. And we still have 3 deer hunts in England, all in the southwest where I live, who hunt red deer. So a hunting pack contains about 30 to 40 dogs. You'll often hear hunters defend what they do here by saying it's natural. These animals are used to being chased by wolves. Again, I'm from Canada. Has never been a pack of wolves that numbered 30 or 40. So your average pack size is between 6 and 8. They may get up to 12. They may be as small as 4. But you're nowhere approaching the numbers of dogs in a hunting pack. And of course, these dogs don't go out on their own. They're accompanied by people, lots of people. The hunt staff who control them and tell them what to do, the riders who come out just for a good day's ride, the supporters who come out on foot and in their cars. These people are all taking part. They're shouting, they're blowing horns, they're using a whip crack to send the dogs back or forward, whichever direction they want them to go in. You have terrier men who go out with fox hunts on quad bikes, following the hounds, so this is noisy. All of this is completely unnatural. This would never happen when a wolf pack went out hunting. All of these people are involved in trying to stop the hunted animal from escaping. So the animal stands very little chance of getting away. So in England and Wales, hunting was banned in 2004, 2 years previously in Scotland, and it was banned because of the suffering it causes. So because the prolonged chase and the violent death causes suffering to the hunted animals. Hare coursing was banned under the same legislation. The hunting bans were never intended to stop these animals being killed, and this is something, again, that the pro-hunt lobby like to twist. It was never meant to stop people killing foxes. It was meant to stop them killing them in the cruelest of ways. So this law was largely based on a report that came out in 2000 called the Burns Report. It was commissioned by the government, and they looked at evidence from all sides of the debate. And they concluded that with fox hunts, death is not always caused by a single bite to the back of the neck. In a proportion of cases, the animal is actually disemboweled first by the hounds, and this seriously compromises the welfare of the fox. With stag hunting, the evidence is extremely compelling and conclusive. Professor Patrick Bateson, who's one of the most preeminent animal behaviorists in Britain, studied this in detail in the 1990s, and he showed that they just have not evolved the physical capacity to cope with the long chase that takes place in a stag hunt. They can be chased for 3 hours for up to 12 miles, and this just does not happen when a pack of wolves hunts their prey. And the Burns report concluded that the challenge to the welfare of the deer is so severe We would not tolerate this suffering in any other situation of animal husbandry. And again, with hares, they sprint very quickly over short distances. They're not designed for a prolonged chase. And you'll see in a minute, I'm going to show you a bit of footage from a hare hunt, that it is completely unlike anything this animal would naturally experience, and therefore they have not evolved to cope with this sort of stress. Not too bad, not very good for that. That's the lead hound. Very, very close to Now he may outrun that first lead hound, but those dogs at the back are going to catch up. Their tail will never have the stomach to Again, the dogs aren't meant to actually kill the deer. They're meant to hold the deer at bay so that it can be shot. But if they catch the deer, they will attack it. I think it's important to show this kind of footage because young people, so some of the students at the university here, will have grown up with hunting being completely banned. They won't be aware of the campaigns and the long-run efforts it took to get hunting banned, and they won't have seen footage like this. So when they hear about hunting, it will be very much theoretical. But until you've seen it firsthand, you cannot comprehend what is actually involved in a hunt. So as I've already pointed out, many of the things they do are completely unnatural. The most unnatural thing they do, and what puts a lie to all the arguments they make about it being the most natural form of population control, they only take the sick and the weak. We hear this quite a lot in defense. The animals that get caught by the hounds are the old, the injured, the ill. In fox hunting, there's a very common practice called digging out, performed by the terrier men. Every fox hunt that goes out is accompanied by terrier men. And they're called terrier men because they ride around on quad bikes with terriers in boxes, usually on the front and the back of their quad bike. The morning before a hunt, these guys go out and they block up any hole in the area that's going to be hunted that day. So a badger set, a fox earth, a rather larger than normal rabbit hole, anything that a fox could escape down into. So first of all, they try and prevent fit and healthy foxes from escaping underground so that they get a nice prolonged chase. If the fox does manage to succeed in running to ground, they dig it out. Now this is a video produced by the trolley before hunting is banned. So the pack hound has chased the fox to ground. The fox is in that hole. Rather than letting a fit and healthy fox live in that hole, the terrier men come. And they put terriers down the hole, and they net other exits so that the fox can't escape without them noticing. This is a locator collar, so he's listening. The dog is put down with an electronic locator collar on it, and he has a receiver at the top, and he can find where the dog has gone, and then the fox is gone. This is the legal way it should be performed. The fox should be shot. This is post the hunting ban. The exact same thing has happened. The hunt's gone away. It is the terrier man digging the fox out. In this case, the dog has got the fox first.
Is it like a shot reel?
Now that is completely illegal under the Animal Welfare Act. That is animal farming. It eventually gets around to giving the whole gun to shoot the fox. Those were fit and healthy foxes. They performed exactly what a fox has evolved to do when it's being chased by predators. They ran underground. So they don't take the sick, the weak, the old, and the injured. They take every single fox they can possibly kill. But they don't just take foxes. So when they talk about fox control, fox being pests, they're deliberately misleading the public. a third of hunts in Britain traditionally hunt brown hares. But they don't talk about that because they can't get away with claiming brown hares are a pest. Brown hares are a biodiversity action plan species in the UK. We are meant to be doing all we can to increase their numbers. Yet a third of hunts, if they were allowed to, would be out there hunting brown hares today, and many of them are doing it illegally. Again, we still have 3 active deer hunts in England, and it's an extremely inefficient way to kill deer, as you can imagine. They only kill 1 deer on about half of the hunts that take place. And of course, Scotland has never really had mounted deer hunts, or at least not in our living memory. Yet it's where most red deer in Britain occur. So clearly they're controlling the deer populations without resorting to incredibly cruel mounted hunts. I'm going to focus a bit more on foxes, because this is what the other side likes to talk about a lot. So I'm going to show you how fox numbers have not increased since the ban, that foxes do not have a significant impact on farming incomes, and that killing foxes actually does nothing to control fox numbers. So the British Trust for Ornithology have a long-standing breeding bird survey. They have hundreds of volunteers across the UK who go out and monitor birds' nests and bird populations. They also record mammal signs when they go out. So Wright et al. Published in the European Journal of Wildlife Management the results of 18 years of the mammal data from the BTO. And they concluded that there was no evidence that fox numbers had increased since the ban. And you can see the trend there. So fox hunting was banned in 2004. The line is virtually straight from 2004 onwards. This is echoed by other conservation groups who conduct their own research. People's Trust for Endangered Species. Oh, that's a typo. Now, we haven't jumped forward 90 years. It's the 2012 report concluded the proportion of sites recording foxes had stayed stable, more or less, over 10 years of the survey, going against all claims in the media that we are increasingly overrun by foxes. So the pro-hunt lobby will often say it's the poor farmers, usually it's the Welsh Hill farmers, certainly the threat to the Hunting Act in the summer. They very much carted out the poor Welsh Hill farmers as the reason why they had to increase the number of hounds being used by hunts across the rest of England and Wales. But multiple studies, and some of these are studies done by the farming industry themselves, show that the loss of lambs to foxes is very, very small. So majority of studies show a less than 5% of lamb losses. So this isn't 5% of all the lambs. 5% of the lamb population isn't lost to foxes. This is just 5% of those that are lost to foxes, if that makes sense. And it's difficult to distinguish between a lamb that has actually been killed by a fox and one that died from natural causes and was then scavenged by a fox. So this is actually produced by the Welsh Meat Board, the HCC, and they did a survey of 70 Welsh sheep farmers. You see the lowland and the hill ewes. A lot of stuff on the chart, but the lowland ewes about 4% to weather and or predation. And again, that's because you can't separate one that died of hypothermia and was scavenged from one that was just killed. And in the hill ewes, 6%. So the majority of losses are due to farm husbandry and farming practices. Even the Burns report in 2000 acknowledged this. This is the government again, and they concluded that only a small proportion of foxes kill lambs. Otherwise, lamb losses would be much higher. But even if a fox is taking your lambs, killing the fox isn't going to solve the problem. So foxes operate a territorial system. So a mated breeding pair will hold a territory. They'll hold it all year long. They produce more offspring than the number of territories that are vacated every year. So you have juveniles who disperse in the autumn throughout the winter, who just sort of mill about, going from territory to territory, waiting to find a vacant one. So there's always this reservoir of, what would you call them, transient foxes. and then foxes that are holding territories. So as soon as you make space in one territory by killing the territory owners, there's going to be another fox that comes through very soon afterwards and just occupies that territory. And scientific studies have confirmed this. So looking at 44 commercial forests in Wales, and they examined the fox fecal densities in the autumn and then again in the spring. And this was after a period of culling in the winter. And the culling was done by a combination of mounted fox hunts, fox control societies, and rangers of the Forestry Service. So quite heavy culling pressure through the winter. And there was no difference in the fox fecal counts. If anything, in the spring, they'd gone up slightly. So there was certainly no evidence of the culling reducing fox numbers, and possibly actually led to slightly more foxes. So the authors concluded that culling undertaken by these people had no utilitarian value with respect to reducing fox numbers. Now that echoes the results of a study done in Scotland 20 years previous to that. They looked at 4 different types of habitats and found that the number of foxes killed rose significantly over those 5 winters of the survey. So the culling pressure increased as the survey went on, yet the number of breeding dens occupied over that period didn't change. So the breeding dens were always at full capacity, breeding in every location again and again, even though the number of foxes being killed increased every year. Now, further studies have shown that these vacant fox territories are taken over by new foxes very quickly, so generally within 3 to 4 days. So if you're killing foxes to try and prevent predation, you will have to be out doing it every 3 to 4 days. It's much easier to put up a fence or lamb your sheep indoors, so on and so forth. But the argument of population control is also a myth for another reason, and that's because fox hunts specifically manipulate fox numbers to ensure that they always have foxes to hunt when they're in an area, particularly when it's a prestigious meet, so they're opening meet, they're closing meet, or if they have another hunt come down to hunt with them for the day. It's quite embarrassing if they don't manage to kill a fox. So earlier this year, we had an expose on television. We had a tip-off. In fact, we had tip-offs about a lot of hunts. A barn right next to the kennels of a foxhound pack. 16 fox cubs inside this barn. The fox cubs were between 8 to 12 weeks old. We managed to rescue all of these fox cubs, took them to a vet and had them DNA tested, and they were from 4 separate litters. So they didn't just happen upon an abandoned litter or a litter where the mother had been killed. These were 4 separate litters. So clearly they had gone out, they had dug out the mother, shot the mother, dug out the cubs, and taken the cubs and reared them artificially. And then throughout the coming hunting season, they would release these foxes, perhaps during cubbing in the autumn when they train the young hounds how to kill foxes, using naive foxes, it's quite good for that, or on the prestigious meets where they need to make sure they have a kill. Another very common practice is the use of artificial fox earths and the feeding of foxes. So if you go to any big hunting area and look in woods and whatnot, you'll quite often find where they have built artificial den sites for foxes. So often using drain pipes, breeze blocks. They make a nice cozy chamber where the fox can breed in the springtime. And then they go and provide food for them in these locations. And again, we've filmed this. So this is Terrier Man in a Cattastock hunt in an area that's commonly hunted by the Cattastock and where there's also an artificial fox earth located, dumping an entire tub of offal. And the next day, Fox is very grateful for the handouts and isn't going to go very far because there's food and a nice warm shelter for him in this area. So the hunt knows when they come through there the next Saturday, there's going to be foxes that they can hunt. So this really puts the lie to the argument that this has anything to do with pest control, which might be why fox numbers have not increased since the Hunting Act came into effect. Now, I know David went over this morning, so I won't bore you with this too much, but it is the most successful wild animal welfare law we have in Britain. It has both the highest number of convictions when you compare it to Protection of Badgers Act, the Deer Act, and the Wild Mammals Protection Act, and also the highest conviction rate of the legislation as well. So when you combine private prosecutions, prosecutions taken by the CPS, and cautions given by police, it's a total of 470 convictions under the Hunting Act, which works out to about 1 conviction a week since it's come in. So, we have to be realistic. The number of red coat hunts that have been prosecuted under the Act has been small. It's mainly been used against hare coursers, but that's more to do with political will than it is to do with the Act itself. Some small changes to the Act could make it a really effective Act against red coat hunting as well. The Hunting Act is popular, though, and again, this is something that often gets misrepresented in the media. So we commission polling every year, and we've been doing this for a number of years. So you can see here I've plotted 2008, 2012, 2013, and last year's data, 2014. This is done by Ipsos Mori. It's a sample size every year of at least 2,000, and you can see that 80% of the population are opposed to fox hunting. For deer hunting, it's 85%, and for hare hunting, we're approaching 90% of British people are opposed to these forms of hunting and believe they should remain illegal. And it's across the political spectrum. So we're looking at the demographics, and we see that urban and rural areas come up very similar. And people from who have voted for the different political parties, okay, the Conservatives are slightly low on foxes, but once you get to deer and hare, they're right up there with everyone else. So it's not a townie issue, it's not a lefty issue. Most people in Britain think hunting should be consigned to the history books forever.